I'm Eleanor, 68 years old, and thought my son Jeffrey hung the moon. For years, I've happily shared my retirement savings to help his family thrive, believing we had the closest relationship. Last Tuesday, after agreeing to fund my granddaughter's college expenses, Jeffrey forgot to end our call. What I overheard shattered my world. His voice suddenly cold. "Mom's so stupid she can't see what's really happening." Their laughter cut deeper than knives. My hands trembled as I listened to strangers wearing my beloved family's faces. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. Before this devastating discovery, I lived what I thought was a blessed life. After losing my husband Robert 10 years ago, I'd built a peaceful retirement on my teaching pension and his life insurance policy. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable enough to occasionally help my only son Jeffrey, now 47, and his wife Amanda, 45. Our relationship had always seemed special to me. When Jeffrey was growing up, it was just the three of us: Robert, Jeffrey, and me. We weren't wealthy, but we made sure Jeffrey never wanted for anything important. I put him through college by taking extra summer school teaching positions. When he married Amanda, I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. Their children, my grandchildren, became the light of my golden years. Tessa, now 17, had my love of books and seemed destined for college success. Brandon, 14, was more reserved but would light up when I attended his baseball games. At least that's what I believed. My financial support of their family began small birthday gifts, Christmas presents, but grew substantially over time. When they found their dream home 5 years ago, I contributed $60,000 toward the down payment. "It's an investment in our family," I told Jeffrey, who hugged me with what I thought were tears of gratitude. Every year I funded family vacations. Disney World when the kids were younger, a cruise to Alaska 2 summers ago. I never joined them, wanting them to have their own family bonding time. "Next time, Mom," Jeffrey would always say. That next time never seemed to come. After a health scare 3 years ago, a minor stroke that terrified me with its warning of mortality, I decided to move closer to them. I sold my house of 35 years and purchased a smaller 2-bedroom condo just 15 minutes from their suburban home. The move meant leaving behind decades of memories and friends, but I convinced myself it was worth it to be part of my grandchildren's daily lives. My weekly routine revolved around their family. Sunday dinners at their house became sacred tradition. I'd arrive early to help Amanda cook, though she always seemed to find tasks for me in other rooms. I babysit the kids whenever asked, even though they were old enough to stay alone. When Brandon needed braces, I wrote the check without hesitation. When Tessa wanted a special laptop for school projects, I purchased the premium model. Looking back, there were signs I simply refused to see. Conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered rooms. The grandchildren's occasional mechanical-sounding affection. Jeffrey's increasing requests for loans that were never mentioned again. Amanda's barely concealed sighs when I suggested family activities. "Mom, you're overthinking," Jeffrey would say whenever I timidly expressed concern. "We're just busy. You know how much we love having you in our lives." I wanted so desperately to believe him that I ignored what should have been obvious. The way they never invited me to school functions until I asked. How Tessa and Brandon rarely answered my texts unless I mentioned bringing something over. The fact that my grandson couldn't recall what I'd taught him just days before, as if he hadn't been listening at all. Perhaps the most telling sign was how they reacted when I decided not to fund a kitchen renovation last year, saying I needed to be more careful with my savings. Jeffrey didn't speak to me for 2 weeks, claiming he was just busy with work. When he finally called, it was to tell me Tessa had been accepted to a prestigious summer program that they couldn't possibly afford without my help. I wrote the check that same day, so grateful that the strained silence had ended. The relief I felt when they invited me back for Sunday dinner should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I brought an expensive bottle of wine and a check for the program's housing fees, which Jeffrey had forgotten to mention initially. My friend Barbara had tried to warn me. "Ellie, do they ever help you with anything?" she asked after I canceled our long-standing lunch date to drive Jeffrey to the airport. I defended them fiercely. "They're building their lives," I insisted. "They'll have time for me later." Later, as it turned out, would be too late for the relationship I thought we had. The day everything changed began normally enough. I was watering my houseplants when Jeffrey called, his name lighting up my phone screen with the special photo I'd assigned him, smiling with his arm around me at Tessa's 16th birthday. "Mom!" His voice carried that special warmth he always used when calling. "How are you doing today?" We chatted about trivial things, the weather, a show I'd been watching, Brandon's baseball team making the regional finals. The easy conversation lasted about 10 minutes before Jeffrey cleared his throat, a signal I'd learned meant he was getting to the real purpose of his call. "So, Mom, Amanda and I have been looking at colleges with Tessa," he began, his tone shifting slightly. "She's got a real shot at Northwestern, you know. Her counselor thinks she's a strong candidate." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely proud. Northwestern had been my dream school, though my parents could never afford it. She's always been so bright. "The thing is," Jeffrey continued, "we're looking at the financial requirements. Even with scholarships, there's going to be a significant shortfall. We've been trying to figure out how to make it work without burdening her with massive loans." I knew where this was heading but didn't mind. My granddaughter's education was exactly the type of thing I'd saved for. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. "Well, for the first year, probably around 30,000. We could manage some. But with Brandon's orthodontist bills and the roof repair last month." "Of course I'll help," I said immediately. "Tessa shouldn't start her adult life with debt if we can avoid it." The relief in his voice seemed so genuine. "Mom, you're amazing. This means everything to us. I'll have Tessa call you tonight to thank you properly." "No need," I assured him. "Just knowing she has this opportunity is thanks enough." We talked for another minute about logistics. When they'd need the money, how to transfer it, before Jeffrey said he needed to go. "Amanda's calling me for dinner. Love you, Mom. You're the best." "Love you too, sweetie," I replied, smiling as I always did when ending our calls. I heard what sounded like the call disconnecting, and I was about to put my phone down when I realized I could still hear muffled sounds. Jeffrey must have pressed the wrong button, or perhaps his phone was malfunctioning. I was about to hang up when I heard his voice again, now completely transformed. "God, that was painful," Jeffrey said, his warm tone replaced by something cold and annoyed. "But at least we got it. 30 grand for year one, and you know she'll cover the rest once Tessa's enrolled." Amanda's voice came through clearly. "Did you have to lay it on so thick? You're amazing, Mom." I thought I was going to vomit. "Hey, it works, doesn't it?" Jeffrey laughed. "She's so stupid she can't see what's really going on. 10 years of this, and she still thinks we want her around for her personality." My body went cold. I gripped my phone tighter, unable to process what I was hearing. "Northwestern is genius," Amanda continued. "She'll never ask too many questions since she wanted to go there herself. We can easily skim 20 grand off the top. Mom's been our personal ATM since Dad died," Jeffrey said, causing my heart to constrict painfully. "Remember when she gave us that down payment and thought we'd actually have her over every week? Thank God she bought that condo instead of moving in with us like she hinted." I heard ice clinking in glasses, as if they were celebrating. "Tessa," Amanda called out, "come thank your father for securing Grandma's money again." My granddaughter's voice joined them, and the betrayal cut even deeper. "Nice work, Dad. Does this mean we can upgrade our Bahamas trip this Christmas? First class this time?" "Absolutely," Jeffrey replied. "Grandma's unknowingly springing for the presidential suite. She'll be home alone eating a frozen dinner while we're sipping cocktails on the beach." "Wait," Brandon's voice now. "Are we still doing that whole thing where we have to pretend to like her cooking next Sunday?" "Unfortunately," Amanda sighed dramatically. "Just choke it down like always. Small price to pay for what we get from her." "Did you see her new haircut?" Tessa laughed. "She looks like a poodle." I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing when she asked if I liked it. "And those clothes from the 1990s, Amanda joined in. "I'm embarrassed to be seen with her sometimes." "Small price to pay," Jeffrey repeated. "Just think of her as our retirement fund with legs." Their laughter swirled around me as tears slid down my face. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. The family I treasured, sacrificed for, rearranged my life for. They were strangers wearing familiar faces. "How much do you think is left?" Amanda asked. "Enough to get both kids through college and fund our vacation house if we play it right," Jeffrey replied. "She's mentioned changing her will to include her church, so we need to step up our game before she gets any more independent ideas." I couldn't bear to hear another word. With shaking hands, I finally ended the call, then collapsed onto my sofa as their cruel words echoed in my mind. The worst part wasn't the financial exploitation. It was realizing that every moment of warmth, every "I love you," every family memory I cherished had been an elaborate performance. I'd been living in a beautiful illusion, carefully crafted to keep the money flowing. And I had been, as Jeffrey so callously put it, too stupid to see what was really going on. For hours after ending that call, I couldn't move from my sofa. My body felt impossibly heavy, as if gravity had intensified around just me. The tears came in waves, sometimes silent streams down my cheeks, other times gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. Night fell, and I remained there in the darkness, replaying their words and struggling to reconcile them with the family I thought I knew. "She's so stupid she can't see what's really going on. Personal ATM. Retirement fund with legs." Each phrase stabbed deeper than the last. I found myself mentally revisiting countless interactions, re-examining them through this new horrifying lens. Last Christmas, when Tessa had hugged me tightly after opening the designer purse she'd always wanted, had she been thinking about what else she could extract from me? When Brandon fell asleep against my shoulder during movie night, had he been pretending, following his parents' script? The family photos prominently displayed in their living room. Were they just props in an elaborate theatrical production designed to fleece a foolish old woman? Around midnight, denial set in. Perhaps I'd misheard. Maybe they were joking in poor taste. Jeffrey had always had an odd sense of humor. Possibly this was some kind of test? I clutched at these explanations like a drowning person grasping at floating debris, knowing they were flimsy, but desperate for anything to keep me afloat. Sleep was impossible. At 3 a.m, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table with bank statements spread before me, a legal pad and a calculator. I began meticulously documenting every cent I'd given them over the past decade. The house down payment, $60,000. Tessa's Sweet 16 party, $5,000. Brandon's braces, $4,800. Family vacation to Alaska, $12,000. Family vacation to Hawaii, $15,000. The mysterious roof repair last year, $8,500. The emergency car replacement, $22,000. Countless birthdays, holidays, small loans that were never repaid. Approximately $35,000. The total made me physically ill. Over $250,000 that I knew about, not counting the weekly dinners I provided, the clothes I bought the grandchildren, the checks I wrote for school activities and sports equipment. But worse than the financial tally was discovering evidence of their deception. The roof repair I'd paid for. I found the receipt accidentally left in a gift bag, showing it had actually cost $3,200. Where had the other $5,300 gone? The emergency car fund that had been so urgent they couldn't shop around. They bought a luxury model with upgrades, not the practical replacement they described to me. Then there were the Bahamas trips. 3 years in a row, they told me they were visiting Amanda's sister in Chicago over Christmas. Just a quiet family holiday, Jeffrey had said. Nothing special. Meanwhile, their social media accounts, which they thought I rarely checked, showed deleted but still cached photos of tropical vacations, presidential suites, champagne toasts, private cabanas. I hadn't been invited, of course. Instead, I'd spent those Christmases alone, telling myself it was fine because we'd have our special time when they returned. I'd even sent gifts to Amanda's sister's address, which they must have arranged to forward. The physical symptoms of this stress manifested violently. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. My chest felt perpetually constricted. I couldn't eat, the thought of food making me nauseous. By morning, I looked as hollow as I felt, my reflection showing a pale, shaken woman with red-rimmed eyes. "I've been such a fool," I whispered to my reflection. The woman staring back at me seemed suddenly decades older, worn down by the weight of betrayal. The phone rang at 9 a.m., Jeffrey's daily check-in call. I watched it ring, his smiling face on my screen now a mockery. For the first time in memory, I didn't answer. He tried again 20 minutes later, then sent a text. Mom, everything okay? Call me when you get this. Tessa wants to thank you for Northwestern. The casual audacity of it triggered something in me. They expected me to continue playing my role. The doting, naive grandmother, the open wallet, the woman too desperate for their affection to question anything. I nearly called him back, the habit of immediate response almost overwhelming my new knowledge. But something stopped me, a tiny spark of anger beginning to glow amid the devastation. I put the phone down and instead did something I should have done years ago. I called my old friend Barbara. Ellie, she answered, surprise evident in her voice. We hadn't spoken in months, my constant cancellations to accommodate Jeffrey's family having strained our 50-year friendship. Is everything all right? No, I admitted, my voice breaking. Nothing is all right, Barb. I've been so blind. As I recounted what I'd discovered, Barbara didn't express shock or surprise, which was its own kind of pain. Oh, Ellie, she said softly. I've worried about this for years, but you wouldn't hear it. Why didn't you try harder to tell me? I asked, though I knew the answer. I did, honey. Remember when I suggested Jeffrey seemed to call only when he needed something? You didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. The memory surfaced, Barbara gently questioning Jeffrey's motives 4 years ago, and my fierce defensive response. I'd accused her of jealousy over my close family bonds. The shame of it washed over me now. What do I do, Barb? I whispered, feeling completely lost. Confront them? Pretend I don't know? They're still my family. Are they? Barbara asked gently. Family doesn't treat each other this way, Ellie. And no, I don't think you should confront them immediately. Not until you've protected yourself. Protected myself? Financially, legally, emotionally, she said firmly. They've been planning how to exploit you for years. Take a day to plan how to stop them. Her words awakened something in me. Not just anger but resolve. I'd spent my career as a high school English teacher helping young people find their voices. Somewhere along the way I'd lost my own. It was time to find it again. You're right, I said, sitting straighter. I need a plan. As we talked, that tiny spark of anger grew, not into a destructive blaze but into something more useful, a steady flame of determination. I'd been a doormat long enough. Whatever happened next, I would no longer be, as my son so cruelly put it, stupid enough not to see what was really going on. After speaking with Barbara, I took a shower, dressed in my most professional outfit, and applied makeup to hide the evidence of my sleepless night. Looking presentable gave me a small sense of control, something I desperately needed. My first stop was First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for over 40 years. Martha, the branch manager, had known me since our children attended the same elementary school. Eleanor. What a lovely surprise, she greeted me, then paused, noticing something in my expression. Is everything all right? In her private office, I explained the situation without emotional embellishment. Just facts. I had reason to believe my financial generosity was being abused, and I needed to secure my accounts immediately. I need to know exactly who has access to my funds, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Martha's expression shifted from friendly to professional concern as she pulled up my information. What she found confirmed my worst fears. Beyond the credit card I'd given Jeffrey for emergencies only, there were multiple accounts where he had been added as an authorized user without my clear knowledge, slipped in among legitimate documents I'd signed over the years. This is concerning, Martha said carefully. There are withdrawal patterns here that raise red flags for potential financial exploitation. What can we do today? I asked, focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on the depth of betrayal this represented. Over the next 2 hours, we systematically secured my finances. I closed joint accounts and opened new ones solely in my name. We changed all passwords and security questions. Martha placed alerts on my accounts for any unusual activity and removed all outside access to my funds. We should discuss your credit cards as well, Martha suggested. Authorized users can continue to make charges until specifically revoked. I thought of the American Express card I'd given Jeffrey years ago, supposedly for emergencies or picking up groceries for me. Recent statements showed charges at high-end restaurants, golf clubs, and department stores, none related to my needs. Cancel them all, I said firmly. Issue new cards only to me. Martha nodded approvingly. I'd also recommend a credit freeze to prevent anyone from opening new accounts in your name. Unfortunately, family members have access to enough personal information to attempt identity theft. The thought that Jeffrey might stoop to such measures would have seemed paranoid yesterday. Today, nothing felt beyond possibility. With my immediate finances secured, I made an appointment with Gerald Hoffman, an elder law attorney Barbara had recommended. His earliest availability was 2 p.m. that same day, a stroke of luck I desperately needed. Between appointments, I stopped at a small cafe, forcing myself to eat something despite my lack of appetite. As I picked at a sandwich, my phone continually lit up with texts and calls from Jeffrey. Mom, getting worried. Please call. Is everything okay? We need to talk about Tessa's tuition deposit. Mom, seriously, call me back. Each message increased in urgency, but none expressed actual concern for my well-being, only for the financial transaction we had discussed. I silenced my phone and put it away. Gerald Hoffman's office provided the next layer of protection I needed. A kind but no-nonsense man in his 60s, he listened to my situation with professional detachment. Unfortunately, Mrs. Harrison, your situation is not uncommon, he told me. Financial exploitation of elders by family members is one of the fastest-growing forms of abuse in America. I never thought I'd be a statistic, I said quietly. No one does, he replied. But you're taking the right steps, and earlier than most. Many clients come to me after their savings have been completely depleted. We spent 3 hours reviewing my assets, creating a new will that established a trust with professional oversight, and discussing strategies to protect my remaining years of retirement. I followed his recommendation to document everything. The overheard phone call, the pattern of financial requests, the evidence of deception. What about confronting them? I asked finally. Gerald leaned back in his chair. That's not a legal question, Mrs. Harrison, so I can only offer personal advice. In my experience, confrontations with family financial abusers rarely result in genuine remorse. More often, they produce more sophisticated manipulation tactics. So I should just cut them off without explanation? The thought was painful, despite everything. I didn't say that, he replied carefully. But I would recommend having your protections firmly in place before any confrontation occurs. People who have successfully exploited someone for years can become desperate when that resource is threatened. By late afternoon, I had a comprehensive legal and financial protection plan in place. As I drove home, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, but I had one more critical task. Sitting at my kitchen table, I took out my phone and methodically blocked their numbers. Jeffrey, Amanda, even Tessa and Brandon. The teenager in me wanted to leave a scathing message first, to hurt them as they had hurt me. The teacher in me wanted to deliver a lesson they would never forget. But the mother in me simply couldn't engage yet. The wound was too raw, my emotions too volatile. After blocking their numbers, I changed my email password and social media credentials. I removed the spare key I'd hidden outside for emergencies. With each action, I reclaimed a small piece of myself. That evening, as darkness fell, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, experiencing the strangest mixture of grief and liberation. For the first time in years, no one could access my finances without my knowledge. No one was plotting ways to extract money from me while pretending to love me. I was alone, but I was safe. The distinction mattered. My doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m., followed by insistent knocking. Through the peephole, I saw Jeffrey's angry face. I stood absolutely still, my heart pounding. Mom, I know you're in there. The car's in the driveway, he called out. What's going on? My card was declined for Tessa's tuition deposit. Are you okay? Open the door. Notice how he mentioned the declined card before my well-being, I thought bitterly. For 30 minutes, he alternated between demanding entrance and feigning concern. Finally, he left, but not before shouting, Fine. Be that way. We'll talk tomorrow when you're being reasonable. I slid down against the door, hugging my knees to my chest like a child. The confrontation I'd been avoiding was coming, ready or not. But for tonight at least, I had reclaimed my home as my sanctuary. The fortress was secure. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. The next morning brought a barrage of attempts to contact me. Jeffrey tried calling from his work phone, which I hadn't blocked. Amanda emailed repeatedly. Even Tessa and Brandon messaged from their school emails, their notes clearly dictated by their parents, too formal, too concerned, nothing like their usual brief texts. I spent the morning with Barbara, who insisted on being present for moral support when I finally responded. "You don't have to face this alone, Ellie," she said, squeezing my hand. "That's what real friends do. They show up." At noon, I finally replied to Jeffrey with a simple text from my new phone number. "I am safe and well. I'll speak with you at 5 p.m. today at Carson's coffee shop downtown. Come alone." A public location was deliberate Gerald's recommendation to prevent a scene. Jeffrey immediately called the new number, but I didn't answer. Instead, I spent the afternoon preparing with Barbara, rehearsing what I would say and, more importantly, how I would maintain my boundaries when the manipulation began. "Remember, Ellie," Barbara cautioned as she helped me choose a simple, dignified outfit for the confrontation. "They've had years to perfect their techniques on you. They know exactly which buttons to push. Your job isn't to win them over or even to make them understand. It's to stand your ground." I arrived at Carson's 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. The manager, informed about the situation, promised to keep an eye on things and offered the back exit if needed. I ordered a cup of Earl Grey tea and waited, my legal folder neatly placed beside me, containing copies of financial records and my new legal protections. Jeffrey arrived precisely on time, his face a mask of concerned confusion that might have fooled me just days ago. Now, I noticed the calculation behind his expression, the way his eyes immediately assessed whether I appeared angry or merely confused. "Mom," he began, sliding into the seat across from me. "What's going on? We've been worried sick. Your cards aren't working, your phone is disconnected." He reached for my hand, but I gently moved it away. "I heard everything, Jeffrey," I said quietly. His expression flickered momentarily before settling back into concern. "Heard what? Mom, you're not making sense. Are you feeling okay? Should we call Dr. Peterson?" The suggestion that I must be experiencing cognitive decline, another manipulation tactic. "I'd prepared for this. I heard your conversation with Amanda, Tessa, and Brandon after you thought you hung up the phone 2 days ago." I continued, keeping my voice steady. "About me being your personal ATM. About skimming money from Tessa's college fund. About the Bahamas vacation you've been planning, while telling me you visit Amanda's sister." His face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, denial, calculation, and finally, an attempt at damage control. "Mom, whatever you think you heard, you misunderstood," he said, lowering his voice. "We were joking around. You know how Amanda gets with her dark humor. It wasn't serious." "You called me stupid," I replied simply. "You laughed about how I didn't know what was really happening. You called me your retirement fund with legs. Was that a joke too?" His strategy shifted instantly. "Okay, look, I admit we said some things we shouldn't have. We were frustrated. You know how expensive everything is these days, and we've been under a lot of pressure. Sometimes we blow off steam in ways that sound terrible out of context." "What's the context for stealing from your mother, Jeffrey?" I asked. He flinched at the word stealing, then leaned forward, voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "Is that what this is about? Money? Mom, you've always said you wanted to help us. That's what parents do. Everything I've ever asked for was for our family. Your family too. I've documented over $250,000 in financial support I've provided in the last decade," I said, touching the folder beside me. "How much of that actually went to the stated purposes?" His expression hardened slightly. "What are you implying? That I've been stealing from you? My own mother? After everything I've done to include you in our lives?" It was the same pattern we'd followed for years, his indignation at being questioned, making me feel guilty for doubting his love. But this time, I had Barbara's voice in my head. "That's not love, Ellie. That's manipulation." "What exactly have you done to include me, Jeffrey?" I asked. "The Sunday dinners where everyone can barely hide their annoyance? The phone calls that only come when you need something? The grandchildren who can't be bothered to respond to my messages, unless there's something in it for them. That's not fair, he protested, but his eyes darted around looking for a new approach. We're busy. The kids are teenagers. You know how it is. I do know how it is now, I agreed. And things have changed. I've consulted with both my bank and an attorney. You no longer have access to any of my accounts, cards, or financial information. My will has been updated with professional trustees to ensure my wishes are followed. Panic flashed across his face, quickly masked. Mom, isn't this extreme? We can talk about this as a family. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Amanda's making your favorite pot roast. No, thank you, I said firmly. I've heard how you talk about my visits when you think I can't hear you. Seeing his usual tactics failing, anger began seeping through his carefully maintained facade. So what now? You're just cutting us off? Your own family? Over one overheard conversation? What about Tessa's college? What about Brandon? I'm not cutting off my grandchildren, I clarified. I've arranged to pay tuition directly to any college Tessa attends, not through you. The same will apply to Brandon when the time comes. But there will be no more blank checks, no more emergency funds, no more financing vacations you lied to me about. Jeffrey's expression darkened. You know what? Fine. You want to play it this way? You'll regret it. You think being alone at your age is easy? Who's going to help when you get sick? When you can't drive anymore? You need us more than we need you. There it was, the naked truth beneath years of pretense. Not we love you, or we want you in our lives, but you need us. The final mask had fallen away. I'd rather be alone than be used, I said, my voice catching slightly despite my best efforts. I'd rather hire help from strangers than be lied to by my son. Jeffrey stood abruptly. You'll change your mind. When you're sitting alone in that condo with no one to talk to, you'll realize what a mistake this is. And maybe we'll be willing to forgive you, maybe not. I forgive you, Jeffrey, I said quietly. But forgiveness doesn't mean allowing abuse to continue. His face contorted with a flash of genuine emotion, not remorse but thwarted entitlement. This isn't over, he muttered before storming out. I sat there long after he left, sipping my now cold tea, feeling oddly calm despite the confrontation. I had expected to feel devastated, to perhaps even cave to his manipulations. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The performance was over. The truth, however painful, was now in the open. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. How dare you treat Jeffrey this way after all we've done for you? The kids are crying. I hope you're happy with yourself. I blocked her new number without responding. Another text came moments later. This one from Tessa's school email. Grandma, it's not what you think. Please don't ruin my college chances because you're mad at Dad. The message struck me as particularly telling, not I love you or I miss you, but concern about her college funding. I composed a careful response. Tessa, your education will be provided for as promised. The money will go directly to your school. We can discuss our relationship separately when you're ready for an honest conversation. As I left the coffee shop, the manager gave me an encouraging nod. Outside, the afternoon sun felt unusually bright, as if I was emerging from a long darkness. The confrontation was over, but the journey was just beginning. The weeks following my confrontation with Jeffrey were both the loneliest and most liberating of my life. The immediate fallout played out exactly as Gerald had predicted. An escalating series of manipulation attempts, followed by anger, then silence when those strategies failed. First came the barrage of guilt-inducing messages from various family members. Amanda's sister, who I'd never actually met but had sent Christmas gifts to for years, called to tell me how I was tearing the family apart. Jeffrey's cousin, who hadn't spoken to me since Robert's funeral, suddenly appeared at my door to check on me and suggest I was overreacting. Then came the Flying Monkey's mutual acquaintances who'd been fed a carefully crafted narrative about my sudden paranoia, or confusion. My neighbor Diane knocked one evening, concern etched on her face. Jeffrey called me, she explained hesitantly. He's worried you might be experiencing some cognitive issues. Said you've been acting strangely, making accusations. I invited her in for coffee and calmly explained the situation. Unlike the family foot soldiers, Diane actually listened, her expression shifting from concern to outrage on my behalf. "That explains why he was so insistent I should keep an eye on you and report back," she said, shaking her head. By the third week, the manipulation attempts gave way to hostility. Jeffrey left a voicemail from a new number, his voice cold. "I hope you're satisfied with destroying our family. Tessa's therapist says she's developing anxiety about her future because of your actions." I deleted it without response, though the maternal instinct to rush in and fix everything was nearly overwhelming. Barbara reminded me daily. "Their emotions are not your responsibility, Ellie. They're using the grandchildren as pawns because they know it's your vulnerability." The most difficult period came when the attack stopped completely. For weeks after the confrontation, absolute silence descended. No calls, no texts, no emissaries. Just nothing. The emptiness of my condo seemed to expand during this time, the quiet becoming a presence of its own. I found myself talking aloud just to hear a human voice, turning on the TV not to watch but for background noise. One particularly low evening, I sat at my dining table alone, picking at a meal I'd prepared with no one to share it with. Sunday dinner time, when I would normally be at their house, being secretly mocked but at least in the presence of others. Tears slipped down my face as I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Perhaps their conditional love was better than no love at all? I almost called Jeffrey that night. My finger hovered over his name in my phone. What stopped me was seeing the background image on my screen, a photo of Robert and me on our 30th anniversary. His kind eyes seemed to look directly at me, and I could almost hear his voice. "You deserve better, Ellie. You always have." Instead of calling Jeffrey, I called Barbara. "I'm not doing well tonight," I admitted when she answered. "I'm coming over," she said simply. "And I'm bringing reinforcements." An hour later, my quiet condo was filled with voices and laughter. Barbara had brought two other friends from our teaching days, Margaret and Susan, both of whom I'd lost touch with during my years of prioritizing Jeffrey's family. They arrived with food, wine, and decades of shared memories. "We've missed you, Ellie," Margaret said, embracing me. "Barbara told us what happened. We're so sorry. But we're also not surprised," Susan added candidly. "We saw how they treated you at Robert's funeral. Jeffrey was checking his watch during your eulogy." That night became a turning point. As we reminisced about our teaching adventures and updated each other on our lives, I realized how much I'd sacrificed for people who had given nothing genuine in return. These women, who asked for nothing but my company, had more authentic concern for me than my own son had demonstrated in years. "You need to get out more," Barbara declared as they prepared to leave. "Sitting here alone isn't healthy." "I'm not exactly overflowing with social opportunities," I replied. "Then create some," she challenged. "Remember how you always wanted to join that community garden after retirement? The senior center writing group? The museum volunteer program? All those things you put aside for Sunday dinners and babysitting." Her words struck home. I'd abandoned my own interests and aspirations to remain constantly available to Jeffrey's family. What did I have to show for it? An empty calendar and depleted savings. The next morning I woke with purpose. I dressed in real clothes, not the loungewear I'd been existing in, and drove to the Riverside community garden I'd admired for years. I had no appointment, no introduction, just determination. "We're actually looking for weekday morning volunteers," the coordinator, Harold, told me after I'd introduced myself. A retired botanist in his early 70s, he showed me around the thriving garden with evident pride. "Most of our younger volunteers can only come weekends, but plants don't know it's Tuesday." I left with a volunteer schedule, a welcome packet, and my first genuine smile in weeks. The following day, I visited the senior center and joined both their writing group and Tai Chi class. By week's end, I'd applied to volunteer as a docent at the local art museum, something I'd wanted to do since retiring from teaching. Gradually, my empty calendar began to fill with meaningful activities and new connections. I met Lucille at Tai Chi, who invited me to her book club. Through the garden, I connected with Patrick and Marion, a retired couple who hosted weekly potluck dinners for fellow volunteers. At the museum training, I befriended Dorothy, another former teacher who understood exactly what I was going through. "My daughter did something similar," she confided during our lunch break. Not as extreme as your situation, but the same pattern. They only want you for what you can give them. How did you handle it? I asked. I stopped giving, she said simply. And then I found out who really wanted my company versus who wanted my checkbook. It was painful but necessary. As my social circle expanded, the ache of family estrangement didn't disappear, but it became more manageable. I still had moments of doubt, still woke sometimes in the night wondering if I'd overreacted. But these episodes became less frequent as my new life took shape. 6 weeks into my rebuilding process, I received an unexpected email from Tessa, sent from a new address not connected to her school account. Grandma, it's me. Please don't tell my parents I'm contacting you. I miss you. What happened? Dad and Mom won't really explain, just say you're being unreasonable about money. That doesn't sound like you. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time, trying to determine if this was genuine or another manipulation attempt orchestrated by Jeffrey. After careful consideration, I replied, Tessa, I miss you too. What happened is between your parents and me. But I want you to know that I've arranged to pay your college tuition directly to whatever school you choose to attend. My issues with your parents don't change my love for you. I'd be happy to meet you for lunch if you want to talk. Your choice of place and time. 3 days later, we met at a cafe near her school. She arrived looking nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting to be followed. The conversation was awkward at first, with Tessa clearly uncomfortable. Dad said you accused him of stealing from you, she began. Is that all he told you? I asked gently. And that you're cutting us all off because you're angry. She fidgeted with her napkin. He said we need to give you time to come to your senses. I took a deep breath. Tessa, do you remember a phone call your father made to me about 6 weeks ago? About your Northwestern tuition. Her expression shifted slightly. The one where, oh, yes, I said simply. He didn't hang up properly. I heard the conversation afterward. Color drained from her face. What exactly did you hear? Everything, Tessa. About me being stupid. About skimming money from your college fund. About the Bahamas trips I never knew about. About how you all really feel about spending time with me. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have said those things. No, you shouldn't have, I agreed. But you're young, and you were following your parents' lead. Are you really going to still help with college? She asked, finally looking up. Yes, I confirmed. I've arranged to pay tuition directly to the institution. Your education shouldn't suffer because of adult problems. Relief washed over her face, followed quickly by shame. So you're only meeting me because of college money? The question surprised me. No, Tessa. I'm meeting you because you're my granddaughter and I love you. The money is separate from our relationship. That's what I'm trying to establish with your family, that I'm a person, not a bank account. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. Tessa gradually opened up, admitting that the family dynamic had always been focused on what they could get from me. Dad always has a strategy before calling you, she confessed. He rehearses what to say to make you feel needed. By the time we parted, we'd established a fragile new beginning, one based on honesty rather than manipulation. I made it clear that I wouldn't be used as a go-between with her parents, and that our relationship would need to be rebuilt on new terms. I'd like to really know you, Tessa, I told her as we prepared to leave, not as an ATM or babysitter, but as your grandmother. That will take time and honesty from both of us. She nodded, then surprised me with a genuine hug before departing. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation, but it was a start. Brandon, unfortunately, remained firmly in his parents' camp, sending only a brief, clearly dictated message. Grandma, I hope you'll come back to our family soon. I responded with love but maintained my boundaries. As for Jeffrey and Amanda, the silence continued. Through community grapevine, I heard they were telling people I had cut them off completely, playing the victims in a narrative that cast me as an unreasonable, confused old woman. It hurt, but not as much as their years of deception had. My new friend Harold from the community garden provided unexpected perspective one morning, as we planted spring bulbs. Family isn't always who you're related to. he said when I mentioned missing Sunday dinners despite the phoniness. Family is who acts like family. The rest are just relatives. Looking around at the life I was building surrounded by people who valued me for myself, engaged in activities I genuinely enjoyed, no longer walking on eggshells to maintain access to ungrateful relatives, I realized Harold was right. I was creating a new family, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation and exploitation. It wasn't the retirement I had planned, but in many ways it was better. For the first time in a decade, I was living authentically, making choices based on my own desires rather than desperately trying to purchase affection from people incapable of providing it. 6 months after the fateful phone call that changed everything, I hosted my first dinner party in my condo. Barbara, Harold, Dorothy, Lucille, Patrick, and Marion gathered around my table, filling my home with genuine warmth and laughter. As I looked at their faces, all new friends except Barbara, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The painful lesson of Jeffrey's betrayal had ultimately given me an unexpected gift: the courage to create the life I truly deserved. 1 year after discovering the cruel truth about my family, I stood in my living room surveying the transformation of both my space and my life. The condo I had once viewed merely as a convenient location near Jeffrey's family had become a true home, reflecting my personality in ways my previous residences never had. Watercolor paintings from my art class brightened the walls. Photographs displayed not just family history but my new experiences. A group shot from the community garden's Harvest Festival, the writing group's publication celebration, a weekend trip to the coast with Barbara and Dorothy. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes I was finally finding time to read, many recommended by my book club. Most tellingly, my calendar hanging in the kitchen was filled with engagements I genuinely looked forward to: volunteer shifts, social gatherings, classes, and personal projects. No more keeping days open, just in case Jeffrey needed a babysitter or Amanda wanted help with household tasks. My financial situation had stabilized as well. Without the constant drain of supporting Jeffrey's family, my retirement savings had recovered somewhat. Gerald, my elder law attorney, had helped me create a sustainable budget that would see me comfortably through my remaining years. More importantly, I no longer felt anxiety about money, the fear that without financial gifts, I would lose my place in my family's life. My relationship with my grandchildren had evolved in unexpected ways. Tessa and I maintained regular contact, meeting monthly for lunch and occasionally attending museum exhibits or concerts together. Our conversations had grown increasingly honest over time. She had chosen to attend State University rather than Northwestern, a decision I supported fully. Dad was furious when I decided against Northwestern, she confided during one of our lunches. I think he had already mentally spent the extra money he thought he could get from you. Brandon remained distant, though he had recently begun responding to birthday and holiday cards with brief but seemingly genuine notes. At 16, he was starting to form his own opinions, occasionally questioning his parents' narrative about me. I remained patient, leaving the door open without pressure. Jeffrey and Amanda had made several attempts to re-establish contact over the months, each following a predictable pattern. First came friendly overtures as if nothing had happened. When those were met with my polite but firm boundaries, they escalated to guilt trips, then anger, then silence until the next attempt. The cycle had become almost comical in its predictability. Their most recent approach had come just last week, an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner. "It's time to put the past behind us," Jeffrey wrote in his email. "Family should be together for the holidays." I declined politely, explaining I had already committed to volunteering at the community Thanksgiving meal, followed by dinner with friends. His response was telling: "I'm sure your friends won't mind if you cancel. This is family." Still trying to dictate my priorities, still placing his wants above my commitments to others. Harold, my closest new friend from the community garden, had become a particularly important part of my life. Our shared interest in horticulture had blossomed into daily phone calls and regular dinners. At 73, he understood the unique challenges of senior life and the pain of family disappointment, having experienced estrangement from his own daughter years earlier. "The hardest lesson to learn," he told me one evening as we walked through the botanical gardens, "is that you can't make someone love you the way you need to be loved. Some people just don't have it in them." Do you think Jeffrey ever really loved me? I asked, the question that had haunted me for months finally spoken aloud. Harold considered this carefully. I think he loves what you represent and what you provide. I'm not sure he knows how to love people for themselves. That's his loss, Eleanor, not yours. The wisdom of that statement had stayed with me, helping to ease the lingering pain. Jeffrey's inability to love authentically wasn't my failure. It was his limitation. I could grieve for what our relationship might have been without taking responsibility for his choices. This past month, I had taken my healing journey a step further by joining a support group for seniors experiencing family estrangement. Facilitated by a compassionate social worker named Grace, the group provided a safe space to share experiences and strategies. To my surprise, my story was far from unique. Financial exploitation of seniors by family members is epidemic, Grace explained during one session. What makes your situation unusual, Eleanor, is that you caught it and stopped it before losing everything. Through the group, I'd found another purpose, helping other elders recognize and escape similar situations. Working with Gerald, I'd helped develop a seminar on financial safety for seniors, which we presented at community centers throughout the area. The gratification of potentially saving others from my experience was profound. The most unexpected development in my journey was my growing comfort with solitude. After decades of fearing loneliness, I'd discovered the difference between being alone and being lonely. My quiet mornings with coffee and a book, evening walks by myself, and peaceful Sundays in my garden were no longer times of desolation but opportunities for reflection and self-connection. This evening, I was hosting a small dinner gathering Harold, Barbara and her husband, and 2 couples from the garden committee. As I prepared my apartment and finished cooking, I reflected on the profound shift in my understanding of what constitutes meaningful relationships. True connection, I had learned, couldn't be purchased with generous checks or constant availability. It grew from mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine interest in another's well-being. My new circle demonstrated this daily in small, significant ways. Remembering my preferences, respecting my boundaries, giving as generously as they received. The doorbell rang, announcing my first guests. As I welcomed them into my home, my true home, filled with authentic relationships, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the painful awakening that had ultimately led to this more genuine life. The betrayal I had experienced, as devastating as it was, had freed me from the exhausting performance of trying to purchase love that wasn't for sale. At 69, I had finally learned that real connections couldn't be bought at any price. They could only be built on foundations of truth and mutual care. As we gathered around my table, sharing food and conversation, I realized that I had found something I'd been searching for my entire life. A sense of belonging based not on obligation or financial transaction, but on being truly seen and valued for exactly who I am. The journey hadn't been easy, and I still carried scars from Jeffrey's betrayal. But I wouldn't trade this hard-won wisdom for anything. Sometimes the most valuable gift is the painful truth that sets you free. Before we finish today, I'd like to ask, have you ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were? How did you handle that painful realization? Share your experience in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support this channel. Remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself and create the life you truly deserve. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to embrace authenticity in all your relationships.